Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Tonight's dinner we're making ground beef tacos. So your ingredients you're gonna need is going to be 1 pound of ground beef, 2 pounds of ground beef, 3/4 cup of water, and 1/2 cup of taco seasoning. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to cook our meat, and we're gonna make sure that our pan is nice and hot before we put our ground beef in, because I like to make sure that before I start any of this that I heat the pan first so that my meat is nice and cooked. So we'll test it, which is perfect. So I'm gonna throw my meat in, and I'm going to
You gotta spin the lettuce, okay?
I'm going to wash my hands, and then after I wash my hands, then I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay? Now, when you oh yeah, we're gonna let the ground beef cook for just like a minute. Now, something you always have to do is when you make when you deal with raw meat that's not cooked, you always gotta wash your hands because it's cross-contamination. Once you touch something, you always gotta wash your hands so you don't get yourself sick or anybody else. So we're gonna basically cook our meat, and we got this on. Now the meat is pretty frozen, so we're gonna let it kind of sit for a minute, and we're gonna let that piece sit, but this part here we're gonna break up while that piece is sitting, because that's a big piece of meat. So we're gonna cook this meat for about 15 minutes or so, or until the meat's cooked. And as it's cooking, it'll start to come apart like this. See? The meat will start to come apart a little bit as it's cooking. So as it's cooking, it'll break apart. And sometimes what you gotta do is when the meat is hard like this, you gotta use a little bit of what I call elbow grease to kind of push the meat in there to kind of cook it out. You want this to cook down. This is gonna take about 15 minutes or so, or until the ground beef is completely cooked through. Now sometimes, one more thing. Something I always put in my tacos, which you guys know this. I always put in some sofrito. This goes in once the meat's cooked. Once I drain the meat, once I cook it, then I put my sofrito in. That gives it a little bit of a good flavor to it. Now we're gonna cook our meat for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until the meat's cooked. And then once our meat is cooked, then we'll show you what it looks like. We're just gonna cook our meat. So this is cooked, and our heat is on a perfect heat so it can cook. Now, you don't want to, this process cannot be rushed. You can't rush this process, okay? It's a really good process that cannot be rushed, so you kind of gotta be cautious when you're cooking. I've been cooking for, I don't know how long, but I've been cooking for a long time. And I have a job now where I cook, so I kind of know what to do. So we're gonna let this ground beef just sit and cook for a bit. Okay? Now, if you want to know how to make ground beef tacos, then you guys know where to go. Now, if someone in the comments below, if someone in the comments section below can tell me how to upload videos to your iPhone, please tell me how to do that in the comment section below, because I've tried to figure that out and I still can't figure out. So someone please tell me how to do that so that I can do that, so I know how to do that, so you guys can see my videos more. So we're just gonna cook our meat down. Now the ground beef, as you can see, is partially, it's not cooked, it's not all the way cooked through yet. It's just partially cooked because there's still some red in there, so you kind of want to break it up a little bit. But this ground beef is going to be delicious. Now, I have another recipe I'm going to do in the future, which is dirty rice. You guys know my dirty rice video, obviously. Dirty rice is pretty simple to make. Now, you guys will never be able to guess what I put in my dirty rice. I put ground beef in it, which is really good. And I put sofrito in it, which I have over here just sitting on the right side of me. So we're gonna put that in a little bit. But we're gonna cook our meat for a couple minutes. We're gonna cook this until it's all the way brown. Now ground beef needs to be cooked. You cannot have it medium well. You cannot have it pink. It has to be cooked all the way through. Because if it's not cooked all the way through, chances are, if you eat it like this, like it is right now, it's probably not gonna taste good. So you wanna make sure you cook this all the way through. You also wanna make sure that you use a pan big enough to hold your meat, because if you use like a small skillet, then there's a lot of fat in meat. So you want to make sure that you're using a big skillet so that you can hold all your meat and you'll be able to drain all the fat later once the meat's already cooked. So just kind of cook your meat until it is all the way cooked through. And then I will show you what the next step is going to be.
All done. You helped. Your job is over. Okay. Awesome.
Because after this process is done, this process, like I said, takes about 15 minutes or so, maybe even longer than that. Because there's a lot of meat and it's a thick piece of meat. 2 pounds of ground beef. So you can see that the meat is nice. It's gonna cook down.
You're not in charge.
See this? See the meat? And one thing I love to tell you guys is when I cook ground beef, when I cook anything, I always put sofrito in it. Anytime I make tacos, I put sofrito in it. Anytime I make dirty rice, I put sofrito in it. Now when I make my yellow rice with pigeon peas, you guys know I put sofrito in that too. Now the crazy thing is with this recipe is that we have water. Now what the water will do, you're not really gonna taste the water. What the water does is that just acts like, that will just be like your sauce. So when you put water in it, it'll be like more of a sauce kind of consistency. I'll show you what that will do too. But you guys can see that the ground beef is going to be cooking for a little bit. Now, the one thing I will say that you don't want to put your heat on too high of a temperature because then you'll burn it. My heat is on about a medium heat, or medium high actually. It's on an 8. It's in between a 7 and an 8 right now. My heat goes all the way up to high heat, but we're not going to cook it on high. We're cooking it.
Yeah, we need to eat dinner. What are you gonna eat? Do you want a waffle? For dinner?
We're cooking this on high heat for a couple of minutes until the ground beef is nice and cooked through. We're gonna keep cooking it. Now what I do to this process is I grab a slotted spoon for when the ground beef is cooked. Because what I like to do is I like to do this. So watch what I do. So I grab a slotted spoon, right? This is not done. Remember, this ground beef is not cooked. Remember that. We're just gonna scrape this off a little so we can get this into the pan so it can start cooking. This ground beef is not cooked, okay? Ground beef's still pink in the middle. So you want this to kind of cook out a little bit. You want the ground beef to kind of be cooked Now, like I told you, there's a lot of fat in this grease, in this ground beef. Okay? There's a lot of fat in that ground beef. So you want to cook this ground beef until it's all the way cooked through. Okay? Now when the ground beef is cooked through, then I'll show you what it looks like. But right now, we gotta cook this. There's still a few pieces. Now this happens a lot when I'm cooking ground beef. The ground beef always gets stuck in between this. And it's not gonna be that big of a deal because you guys know this. That when we cook our ground beef, this happens. Now, you're gonna let this ground beef it's almost cooked through. It's about 99% of the way cooked through. We're almost at the 100. So this ground beef, you need to let this ground beef cook for, like I said, 15 to 20 minutes. It's gonna take about 20 minutes to cook through because it's a big, thick piece of meat, and it's a lot of meat. Okay, we're gonna make tacos out of this tonight. So we're having tacos. Now, a lot of you guys were asking me to make you guys an updated version of ground beef tacos, which I am going to right now. Okay, once the ground beef is cooked, then I'll show you what we're gonna do next with the recipe. Okay, we put sofrito in it. Oops. We put, now there's a lot of stuff that goes in the recipe. Now you could see that the meat looks pretty good. It's cooked through. It looks yummy. You want this to kind of cook out a little bit more until it's cooked. Now I'm gonna kind of scoop this off the burner so that this is not in the burner, because you want it. Now you see the heat's on medium high, which is what I want. I want the ground beef to be all the way cooked through. Now you're probably asking me, well, when do I put the sofrito in? Like I told you guys in the very beginning, this sofrito, this here, does not go in until the ground beef is cooked through. Now, what I used to do, what I did like way before I did it at the end, I put it in the beginning. That didn't really work, because when I went to drain the ground beef, it kind of the sofrito kind of went down the drain. That's gross. So that's why I do it towards the end of the cooking process, when this part is complete, because it's just easier for me to cook it in. It's easier for me to stir it in the ground beef, and it's easier for it to cook out a little before we do all that. So we're gonna cook this meat. And you see the meat now. You see how the meat's nice and cooked. Now, when the meat gets up to this point, I usually like to turn the heat on low. And the reason why we turn it on low heat is because the heat will, let me turn this in the middle, actually. Yeah, in the middle. The heat will conducts really good heat. Now, you want your ground beef to cook all the way through. Like I said, you do not want it to be cooked. You don't want any pink showing. You want it to be browned, right? So like this, you see? You guys can see that? You see how the meat's nice and brown? I'll turn to the sides so you can see it. Okay? And if you guys can smell this, by the way, it smells so good. So you see what I mean by all the fat? Look at that. All the fat in that pan. Look, see? Now some people, what they do, I've seen a lot of people do this on TV. They add oil to their meat. They add oil to their frying pan. I don't do that because that just defeats the purpose. There's already a lot of fat in your meat. So, you know, like the whole point of it is, like, why add oil, like olive oil, to your meat? There's really no point in doing that because there's a lot of fat in this ground beef already. Okay? You want your ground beef to be cooked all the way through, which it is. You guys can see now that the meat is nice and cooked. And it smells good. Okay? The meat's nice and cooked. You see this? Look, see? That's what you want. You want your meat to be nice and cooked through. Okay? Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'll be back in about a minute or two. I just gotta go ask my assistant if I can drain this meat. And when I come back, we will drain our meat. So I'll be right back. Alright, okay guys, I'll be right back. Okay guys, so what we're gonna do now is the meat's nice and cooked through. We're gonna drain our ground beef, okay? Like I said, all the fat, the grease is what you don't want. Okay? So we're just gonna take our meat and we're gonna drain it out. There's a lot of meat in there. Okay, there's a lot of meat. Put it back on the stove. Now what I'm gonna do to this pan, I'm gonna add some sofrito. Okay? Now, I'm gonna turn this down to like a, well, we'll leave it at a 7 for right now. Okay, so now, so I'm gonna let my meat drain in the pot. Get that ready. I'm gonna let this kind of sit and drain out. Once the meat's drained, then we'll put in our, this sofrito. Okay? You want the meat to kind of drain. I'm gonna let that sit. Now, as that's sitting, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of my sofrito. I'm gonna add 1, 2, 3. We're gonna add 3 tablespoons. Now that's gonna splatter, but we wanna make sure we're cautious, okay? Now what I'm going to do next, I'm going to turn this down to about a medium heat to about low heat so it's not splattering everywhere. So what I do is I kind of come in here and I stir it around a little bit, just to kind of cook it out. Now once that's cooking, I have it on low and I'm going to add my meat. Okay, so all this ground beef is going to go into our skillet. Okay. Alright, now that I got that in, I'm gonna kind of flatten this a little bit. Okay. Now we're gonna add our taco seasoning. Okay. And now we're gonna add our water. Here goes 1/3 cup of water going into our skillet. Now we're gonna turn this heat down to about a low heat. We're not gonna boil this. We don't want to boil this at all. We just want this to cook a little bit more. So what I do is I take my spoon and I stir in the taco seasoning in the water and the sofrito. You're not going to be able to taste the you're not going to be able to see the sofrito, but you'll be able to taste it in there, trust me, okay? I just add the sofrito just for flavoring because it just flavors up my dish. It just flavors it up a little bit, that's why I add it. Okay, that's why I add the sofrito into my dish. But you don't have to add it if you don't want to. If you don't want to add it, that's fine. You don't have to add it. It's just for flavoring. Okay? I use it just for the flavor. You're not going to be able to taste it, but it's just for flavoring, okay? So what we're going to do next is we're going to stir this in for a couple minutes. And then once this is all stirred in together, once it's all mixed in, mingled together, then your dish will be done, okay? I have this heat on a medium heat. Or no, sorry, not medium. That was for the cooking process. I have this heat on low heat, okay? I keep it on low heat because if I put it on high or medium heat, then it just burns and the water just evaporates. And that's not what we're looking for. We want the juice, we want the water to be in the skillet. Okay? So you see the ground beef now? You see how it's nice and thick? Look, see? So, I don't know if you guys can really see that, but if I aim the camera, you guys can probably see that the meat, look. See? It's nice and thick. That's what you want. You don't want it to be runny. You don't want it to be liquidy. You want it to be nice and thick. And any pieces I did not break up all the way, I'll kind of chop them up and get it in there. Just to kind of, you know, break it up a little bit. But for the most part, the ground beef is cooked through, which is what I like. I like the ground beef to be all the way cooked. Okay, so this is where I'm going to end it here. Okay? But I hope you guys have enjoyed this recipe. And I'll be back later, or no, I'll be back soon to show you another video, okay? Alright, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Bye, vlog on, peace out, boom. Okay, bye guys.